and another effective one. Matthew breaks a tackle, breaks another, gets a block. There are no flags and the race is on. And Matthew goes 90.
Burrow with the snap. Here comes the blitz. Burrow steps away from it, throws, catch made! Justin Jefferson has it at the 38, racing down the far line, sideline, 10-5, touchdown, Tigers!
Another play fake by Burrow, and a deep strike, and an open receiver, Jamar Chase, another touchdown!
Daniels pulls it, takes it himself, he's got the sideline! Jane Daniels off to the races! And a bang back inside, he takes it to the house! 85 yards for Daniel!
Go ahead and say it, Ed.
Go Tigers!
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome in on a Sunday evening to the world's greatest podcast. This is the gold standard where we love purple, but it is all gold. Thank you for joining us here on this Sunday evening. Hope that you guys are gearing up, getting ready for the Christmas season. Spend some time with your family, with your loved ones. Love on those that love you. Just some advice from the kid. But you are here for LSU News. But before we get into today's podcast, make sure you like, share, subscribe. Turn on those notifications so you don't miss any upcoming episodes. There's going to be some craziness coming up when the transfer portal opens on the 2nd of January. I expect the Tigers to be headline makers as the portal opens and as Lane Kiffin starts to make out his 2026 roster. Thank you for choosing us. If you're an LSU fan, it's your first time listening, I hope that you will come back and see us. I think you will like this podcast. Matter of fact, I know you will like it. And jump in the comments and let me know what you think about this podcast, what you like, what you disagree with, and just let me know your overall feelings, how you feel about the Tigers going into the transfer portal season where we expect to be huge players. So on today's episode, I just want to talk a little bit about what I think would be the Tigers' best needs as far as the transfer portal as the transfer portal opens up. We talked about last episode that the Tigers were around, I think they were around 7 or 8 entries. I think they're up around 10 now. The most notable entries, really the one that hit big last week was freshman 5-star offensive lineman Carius Kern out of Arkansas. And the other big, even one worth mentioning right now was Ahmad Bro, who started a lot of games for the Tigers last season at defensive tackle and played in the rotation this year. So far, to say out of 10 to 12 players that are in the portal, that only 2 of those played significant time, I think it's a win thus far for the Tigers, especially while changing coaching staffs. There's going to be change. I expect some guys, especially at the back half of the roster, to leave. I think Coach Kiffin might not. I think he may think it may be a great idea for a lot of those guys to maybe look elsewhere. Look, this is a part of the business, right? And I told the guy I was talking to on Friday on my TikTok, make sure you guys go follow the TikTok. I'm always active on there. I respond to every single comment under any post that I make. I'm always interacting there, and I love you guys, and I appreciate you guys for joining in and showing me some love. But I had a conversation with a guy there just talking about how, just because a player jumps in the portal, there may be more to it, right? It may not be just this player doesn't like it here anymore. It could be Carius Kern just sees his future brighter elsewhere. It could be the offensive staff has a premium on certain positions and players, and his number wasn't where the coaching staff thought his number should be. So we'll never know the true reason unless he comes out and tells us, right? But there's just always so much that goes into why a player is or isn't in the transfer portal. So I don't want to jump to any conclusions. I don't want to cast any aspersions about Carius Kern or anything like that. I just think as an offensive player, you have to seriously, if you're wanted, consider jumping in the portal instead of being a part of the Lane Kiffin offense. I can't make that make sense. But again, it's not my decision. It's not my cross to bear. not my decision to make for these players. But if I'm an offensive player and the coaching staff wants me, I want to be a part of a Lane Kiffin offense. So yeah, the portal's going to open up as we talked about on the 2nd of January, and this team has a lot of needs, and I'm just going to kind of briefly run through what I think their needs are on offense and defense by each position. Go from there, and we'll close it out, okay? So first up, the most important position in football is the quarterback position. And I expect LSU to bring in multiple quarterbacks, maybe even 3. This one's going to hinge on whether or not the coaching staff sees a future in Michael Van Buren. If they do, they bring in 2. If they don't, I think they bring in 3. Ideally, you'd like a 1-year starter type of guy, say Trinidad Chambliss if he gets a waiver. Sam Levitt is another guy that LSU's name is in the conversation with, and a much younger guy who has multiple years left, but is willing to sit that 1 year and develop and be ready for the following season. Who that is, I don't know. There's still guys going in the portal every day. There'll be more names as the portal opens up on guys that go in. But I think starting off with the quarterback position, you're going to need at least 2 to 3. All right, next up, the running back position. Right now, LSU still has Caden Durham and Harlem Berry as their only confirmed backs that aren't in the portal or leaving. Jawan Johnson is in the portal. He's leaving. Caleb Jackson is in the portal, and he is leaving. Other than walk-ons or anything like that, we don't have, let's just say we start maybe with 2 backs. And here's where it gets interesting. If you saw the video posted today by LSU on Twitter, Kevin Smith was at the facility with all the other offensive coaches who showed up today at the facility to get to work. So he will be your next running back coach. It's not officially announced yet. It will be soon, but LSU released a video today of all the offensive coaches coming into the staff building today, and Kevin Smith was right there with Lane Kiffin. So does Kevin Smith bring Q1 Lacey with him? I think so. But as you know, and as we talked about before, Frank Wilson, LSU's previous running back coach, is going to Ole Miss. I'm going to make a bold prediction here. I'm going to say that LSU loses Caden Durham. I think Caden maybe goes closer to home. He's from Texas, but I think maybe Oklahoma is a player here. Both of his parents played at Oklahoma. It was a major pull by Frank Wilson in the beginning to get Caden Durham. Both of his parents track, I think. I think either his mom played track and his dad played football, but they're both athletes at the University of Oklahoma, and Caden still decided to come to LSU. That was a huge win for Frank Wilson. So I think he's more tied to Frank Wilson than Harlem Berry is. I think Harlem Berry is a Louisiana kid who grew up wanting to play for LSU. Yes, it sucks him losing Frank Wilson, but I don't see Harlem Berry going anywhere because he's going to be a major part of this offense next year. Lane Kiffin knows how to use running backs. I think he stays. And I think you get Q1 Lacey. So I'm going to say you need at least 2 running backs, maybe 3 out of the portal. Because, again, if I'm saying that Caden Durham leaves and you only have 1 guy in Harlem Berry, you get 1 over in Q1 Lacey, but that's still only 2 backs. And they don't have a back in this recruiting class. So I think the Tigers may need 2 to 3 running backs out of the portal. And this is going to be expensive. As I talk about all these numbers, all these players, it's up to the staff to figure out how to balance it and get it all in line, and I think they will. But I think you may need 2 to 3 running backs out of the portal as well. All right, wide receiver. This is where there's still some stuff up in the – I'm not sure. Do you get Nick Anderson back? Xavier Thomas is gone. Aaron Anderson has decided to leave, and Chris Hilton is gone as well. That's 3 of your guys right there that are going to be gone. You do return guys like Kyle Parker. Teron Francis Manchild is there. A lot of people think he has a bright future. Phillip Wright, who's still there. But yeah, the thing that sticks out is that you don't necessarily have an alpha number 1 receiver in that room that's already established and know that going into next season. So I think the Tigers are very, very aggressive here. I think they go get a number 1 guy out of the portal, whether it's somebody like Nick Marsh from Michigan State. I know half of the football world is probably praying someone like Cam Coleman gets in the portal from Auburn. He'd be the most highly touted receiver in the portal. Somebody like that for sure on the outside where you could say, here's a dude, and then you build around it. I expect them to get some guy. I expect them to get Winnie Watkins from Ole Miss. I do. This position, wide receiver, I expect the Tigers to bring in maybe 4 to 5 wide receivers out of the portal. Um, and we're talking about a lot of portal guys. And it's going to be more on offense than more so on defense. Defense doesn't need as much. They need bodies, but offense needs they need a complete rebuild. That's what happens when you get rid of a staff that don't score 25 points in a game all season and have some of the offensive ineptitude that we did. Most of the players are going to be gone that they don't like. All the coaching staff is gone that they don't, that they saw fit, which was nobody. So there's going to be a lot of fluidity on offense here. There's going to be a lot of people coming in, a lot of players coming in, and you still got the recruiting class as well. I think that's got another 3 receivers coming in, but I think you need at least 4 wide receivers, maybe 3 if you get 3, 2 dudes and maybe another guy. But I think LSU needs a dude. They need a Malik Neighbors, Brian Thomas, Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson type of guy on the outside because we haven't had that since Malik Neighbors left. Tight end. And this is another position where what does Donovan Green do? I think the Tigers will need at least 1 tight end out of the portal and a guy that I think that they can line up in line as well as a threat. Kind of sort of what you saw out of, I think it's Daquan over at Ole Miss, the big tight end that they have. Lane's going to be looking for somebody similar to that, somebody that can handle inline blocking and somebody that can be a threat out of the, out in pass patterns. We obviously know how crazy and freak of an athlete that Tre'Davious Green is. He's going to be a vital part of this offense next year. He needs to work on his hands, make sure he's more consistent catching the ball. But I think they want somebody that's more of an inline blocker as well, so you can flex Tre'Davious out, not try to make him something that he's not, which is a blocker, which is his staff just insisted on lining him up in line, trying to make him a blocker. More blunders by this offensive staff. So I think you need maybe 1 tight end out of the portal, 1 really solid do-it-all kind of tight end, and let's see what Donovan Green does. If Donovan Green stays and you get a solid tight end out of the portal that can do that, you got 4 guys because you got the freshman. Well, you still got John David LaFleur. You still got him. So you got the freshman, you got John David LaFleur, Donovan Green, Tre'Davious Green. But I still think unless JD LaFleur is that guy that can block and they feel comfortable with, then you don't need one. But I'd say if he's not ready for that yet, you will need to bring in another older, experienced guy that can handle some of that blocking load. Now, here's the other big one. Offensive line. I'm going to say LSU needs minimum 5 offensive linemen. And this is the hardest position in the portal to get because talented offensive linemen usually don't leave their schools. So LSU is going to have a real task at finding at least 3 guys that could be starters in the portal and 2 guys that can be serviceable backups, in my opinion. Tyree Adams, I think, is going to be starting, whether that's at left tackle or right tackle is another discussion. Hopefully you get back Braylon Moore. He still has eligibility, but we don't have an announcement yet on whether he's coming back or not. Let's assume you get Tyree Adams and Braylon Moore back. This is where Karis Karen could have helped big time because you could have had 3 starters looking to go get 2 guys instead of 3. Now you're looking to go find 3 starters, 1 tackle, at least 2 guards, 2 inside guys, and I think you'll be okay. I expect some of these guys to look better next year just because of the scheme, just because of the coaching. I think our scheme and coaching was so bad, but I do think there needs to be some reshuffling, remolding in this offensive line room. So I expect the Tigers to get about at least 5 offensive linemen out of the portal. So it's 5 offensive linemen, 1 tight end, 4 receivers, that's 10, 2 or 3 running backs, that's 12, 13, and let's say 2 to 3 quarterbacks. So at least about 15 to 16 bodies needs to be on offense. So that means I expect the Tigers to get a lot of guys out of this portal. I'm talking about upper 20s, possibly close to 30. All right, so for the defensive side, let's start with the defensive front. So the good thing about the Tigers next year on the defensive front is that you're bringing in Lamar Brown, you're bringing in Richard Anderson, you're bringing in Deuce Gerald's. I would not be surprised if all 3 of those guys are in the 2 deep. They're just way too talented. I think with great coaching, those guys are going to be really, really, really a force in the 2 deep. Speaking of that, as I speak, it's not official yet, but it looks like the Tigers will hire defensive line coach Sterling Lucas from South Carolina. When I say that, everybody's eyes automatically flicker up to Dylan Stewart. There have been rumors that if he, in fact, becomes the defensive line coach for LSU, what that means for Stewart's future could be up in the air. But I think if the Tigers can pull off and close the deal on Sterling Lucas, and if you can get anywhere close to getting Dylan Stewart, my, this defense is totally different next year because we haven't had a guy like that. We had Braden Swinson, but I mean, a dominant guy pass rusher has probably been Arden Key, the last one we had when he set the sack record. So it's been that long since LSU has had a really, really, really dominant edge guy. Perkins was awesome his freshman year, but I mean a true edge guy, not somebody that's kind of playing out of position. So if you could pull off Dylan Stewart with Sterling Lucas, who's well renowned as a really good coach. He had guys like Kyle Kennard, TJ Edwards, I think is his name, another guy that got drafted out of there. They got some guys this year with a lot of good sack numbers. So he's known as a really good coach, really great recruiter. If I look at his recruiting profile here on 24/7, his highest all-time commit. So Dylan Stewart obviously was a 5-star out of the 23 class, and Nicholas Harbor, who's another freak athlete out there. Those are his two jewels right there, both 5 stars out of the 23 class. Julian Walker, who was an edge, committed in this year's class, actually. High 4-star guy, 6'5", 252. And then you have a couple other 4-star guys below him. So has a reputation for being a really good recruiter. If you look at South Carolina's board, they don't really like the fact that he's leaving. So I think you got a pretty good hire there. We're hoping that he can stay for multiple years. The Tigers have been snake bitten when it comes to the defensive line coach position. So hopefully Sterling Lucas, we can close the deal on him in Baton Rouge, and hopefully we can pull Dylan Stewart with him. So if you want to talk about numbers, look, if you get Dylan Stewart, I don't think you need anything else on the edge. Maybe they get another edge guy, but look, I would say Gabriel Rutherford will probably be one edge starter. Dylan Stewart will probably be the other. You still have guys like Trent Henderson who came in maybe in the 2 deep, and you got younger guys like C.J. Jackson, Damian Shanklin, Dylan Carpenter. So you got bodies there. So maybe 2. I'll say maybe 2. If you get Stewart and another guy, I think you're fine there on the edge. As far as the interior, you got a lot of bodies on the interior. You got Don McKinley. You got Walter Mathis. You got Sean Washington, who played this year. You got Richard Anderson. Where does Lamar Brown fit in there? I think they have a lot of bodies there, so maybe just one kind of impact or older guy there to line up beside Don McKinley, so you're not dumping on true freshmen to have to come through and play at the defensive tackle spot. Linebacker. So I say maybe one linebacker if it's a dude, because I think the young linebackers in the room, mostly guys like Tylen Singleton, Jaden Breaker, Charles Ross, I think those guys are uber athletic and the exact type of linebackers that LSU needs on the field. Somebody besides Weeks that has the feet to be able to keep up with mobile quarterbacks and the covering space. So maybe one linebacker. And then in the secondary, it's easy to say. I can say, hey, if you go get another Mansour Delane, then get it. But what's the odds of you going to get another Mansour Delane? But I say if Corey sees another guy that can be a lockdown corner to where he can maybe play, DJ Pickett on one side, lockdown corner guy on the other side, and then PJ Woodland in the slot. If he wants to see that, then I could see maybe one impact guy there. But you may already have that guy in Jakeem Jackson. Look, 3 of LSU's 4, snap getters at corner are going to come back. And they have Havon Finney coming in out of California. So I say maybe if it's a guy and Corey thinks this guy is a, true number 1 or number 2 corner on the outside that can play on the island, you bring him in. Safety. Safety is sort of similar in that same spot. I expect Tamarcus Cooley to be back. I expect Deshaun Spears to be your other starter. So maybe just one guy there, maybe a more experienced guy, an explosive guy, a box safety that can come down and kind of do some of the things that A.J. Halsey did. So you don't need as much on defense. So let's say one safety, one impact corner, one linebacker, one defensive tackle, and 2 edge guys. So you need about 6 to 7 guys on defense is what I think. It may be more, but 6 to 7 guys on defense, about 15 to 16 on offense. I'm going to predict the Tigers get somewhere around 25 bodies in the transfer portal. And I wouldn't be surprised if it's more. So that's where I sit as of today. Guys, thank you for joining in on the LSU Gold Standard Podcast. I'm your host, Doe. Thank you so much for all the support, guys. Continue to like, share, subscribe. Drop those comments down in the comments bar. Let me know what you guys are thinking. How many guys do you think LSU takes in the portal? And who are some of the names that you want the Tigers to be tied to that are already in the portal? Guys, thank you again. You have a great Sunday evening. This is the Gold Standard Podcast where we love purple, but it's all gold, baby. Have a great night. Go Tigers, and tell them to play Nick.